battle starts.
At some point, we've all tried to stream a fine episode of Tech Quickie and run up against a Wi-Fi range limit. So, have you ever wondered, why can't we just boost it to maximum power and extend the range? To answer, we reached out to our good friend and Wi-Fi expert Joel Crane, and we'd like to thank him for his contributions. Two of the most obvious ways that we can increase range present other technical problems. You see, at slow speeds, the modulation scheme, the small adjustments in the waveform that actually carry the data, is much simpler and easier for equipment to understand. But as speeds get faster and faster, the modulation schemes are more complicated and more prone to errors and interference. So the farther away from the access point you get, the slower you have to go. In fact, if your access point is sending out a signal and not getting any kind of reply from another gadget acknowledging that it received the signal, the AP will keep slowing the speed down and down and down until it gets a response. And this is a big part of the reason that speeds get slow if you walk farther away from your router. Now, as we demand faster speeds for high-def streaming, gaming, and file transfers, simply slowing down our Wi-Fi to make it go farther isn't a viable solution. So, back to more power then, right? Well, not quite. The Wi-Fi standard doesn't have a super high transmit power to begin with in order to comply with telecommunications laws in different countries. For example, in the United States, you can't go higher than 200 milliwatts, and most routers are configured by default to transmit at this maximum. So you can't turn it up any further, legally. However, that doesn't mean that getting better Wi-Fi range is a fool's errand. One trick that actually does work fairly well is to focus the Wi-Fi signal in one direction. You see, a typical home router has omnidirectional antennas, where the signal is transmitted evenly in all directions, like a big donut shape. But if your router is at one end of your house and your couch is at the other, that's not the best setup. Instead, you can get something called a patch antenna, which looks like a big flat panel and sends the signal out in one direction. They're more common in commercial settings or at trade shows, but there is nothing stopping you, for example, from sticking one on the side of your house and blanketing your backyard in a strong Wi-Fi signal. Another trick that's built into some Wi-Fi standards is the use of a long guard interval. Here's what this means. Between short parts of the transmission called symbols are short time intervals before the next symbol is sent. These guard intervals are there to cut down on the interference between symbols. So if they're short, you get more data, but if they're long, you get less interference and therefore longer range at the expense of some speed. Wi-Fi 6, by the way, is introducing extra long guard intervals for outdoor use, where ranges often need to be longer. Of course, another winning strategy is to cut down on interference in other ways. You can do this by using narrower channels, so by using 40 megahertz instead of 80 on the 5 gigahertz band, as well as making sure that you don't have unnecessary transmissions flying around your house, like from baby monitors or Bluetooth devices that you aren't actually using. And this one can make more of a difference than you might think. In fact, a huge part of how wired Ethernet has gotten faster has simply been by cutting down on noise inside the cable. However, other than the tips we've mentioned in this video, I wouldn't expect too much new tech in the near future that can extend Wi-Fi range without adding more antennas in something like a mesh network. Speed and range are always going to be balancing acts, so you gotta pick. Do you want the Baconator, or do you wanna lose weight and feel good? You only get to pick one. Are you concerned about a data breach causing your credit card info to fall into the wrong hands? Here, Brandon, take this. No, that's the wrong hands! Then check out today's sponsor, privacy.com/techquickie. They have a free, easy-to-use service that hides your credit card number. The way it works is by creating a virtual card number that is locked to whatever merchant you're shopping at. So even if that merchant gets hacked, the bad guys can't take your card number and then go use it somewhere else as they please. And if they try, you'll even get a push notification so that you are always in the loop and you can cancel that card immediately. Cards are super easy to set up. You just create an account, link your virtual cards to your checking account or debit card, add a limit, and that's it. You're all set. They've also got a browser extension that autofills information for you when you're making a purchase, so there's a convenience factor as well. Privacy.com is PCI DSS compliant, uses military-grade encryption to secure your information, and they offer two-factor authentication.
Torpedoes, direct front.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another roundup. So, confusion is up and PC game spending is down. A new strategy for DLC has sparked a little bit of backlash. Consoles may have dodged a massive tax bullet, and a whole bunch more. Of course, we make 6 gaming industry news analysis videos per week, so if you'd like to help us out, like for the algorithm, sub and ring that bell. Cheers, and let's get going. First up, we've got a fairly deep story. So, there are new study findings. They were published last week, and they point to a decline in PC game spending, and it could be down to one pretty darn simple thing: consumer confusion. So, NPD analyst Matt Piscatella claimed on Twitter that the great PC distribution platform wars of 2019 did not do consumer spending on PC any favors. And this one is, it's a bit interesting. So, 2019, of course, was the big platform wars, and that's really when it hit the PC. And between the persistent rise of the Epic Games Store, and then what just felt like an influx of company-specific storefronts, a la the Rockstar launcher, yeah, PC gamers' attention was certainly split in more directions than usual. Now, Piscatella agrees that this new market diversity created a sort of incomprehensible mismatch of competition, exclusivity, this is available here, that's available there, and that it generally just prompted apathy amongst the PC gaming community when it actually came to buying new games. He states that priorities of enhancing consumer experience, choice, and minimizing confusion were all de-emphasized in 2019. And, obviously, when competition takes precedence over user experience, the whole industry suffers. Piscatella also emphasized that this isn't specifically fault of the Epic Games Store, but that the dip in spending is also a product of the broader PC market disruption that we saw last year. If you think about it, right? Ubisoft, they didn't release super major titles on Steam. A few of theirs were duds. Red Dead Redemption 2, that hit Steam really late. I think there's a lot going on there. Now, one person who is very quick to credit the Epic Games Store all the time is, of course, Tim Sweeney, CEO of Epic. And responding to Matt's findings on Twitter, Tim outlined his desire for an analysis of new game ownership from 2018 to 2019, as Tim suspects that it's going to be way up because of the Epic Games Store. And yeah, Tim rightly highlights the massive amount of free games that were, given away on a weekly basis on that store. And he could be onto something, but there's one thing I want to bring up here. Why the hell would you buy games in 2019? And, I'm saying that as somebody who wants to sell you games eventually, right? But the point here is, Games Pass. Small amount of money, stupidly large amount of content. Even the Humble Bundles subscription, incredible value for money. Twitch Prime, throwing games at you. The Epic Games Store, just flinging games at you faster than you can even, receive and play the darn things. There is so much value content. We covered this in our big video about the platform wars and about how everyone's just scuffling to get you. And I've got to wonder, are they just daring consumers not to purchase new games? Because if you're getting all these incredible deals, and for many games, if the best way to play a new game is, through some bizarre method of Origin Access, Premier, or Game Pass, are people just not going to purchase straight up games? And I think this is a major issue, the devaluing of content that we're going to face, because right now everyone is just competing with each other to get you in. What happens when that competition is over, when things calm down, and then they've actually got to maintain you and, sort of shift over to a non-growth business model where the focus is on profit and stuff like that. I've got to wonder how that's going to play out. Anyway, moving on, we've got an interesting story. So Paradox have done something that's actually, I think, really interesting. Now, they constantly get raked for the amount of DLC that their games have, like, EU4, it's like $300 or something. So they've responded by trialing an all-included subscription service, albeit it's one that people had to dig around to find because it was a trial. Now, Paradox have since explained that their goal is to lower the barrier of entry for their games, and that the subscription is not going to be replacing purchases, and that people will not have to pay for the same thing twice, and that there will be zero exclusive content for subs. Now, they admitted the test should have been, better communicated to their customers, which I think absolutely is the case and is fair. And I think the backlash to this is interesting. I've got to wonder if it's overblown, because while I'm going to talk a bit more abstractly about business models in this and how I think this is basically quite transparent and isn't really hoodwinking people, it is important to also acknowledge that in a way, like the Europa Universalis DLC problem, like if you want to play a really good version of the game, that is a problem that Paradox created for themselves through their business model. And, this subscription model is now sort of a way to solve that problem in their business model. But, is it a problem in their business model? As far as they're concerned, it is a really good moneymaker for them. It's kind of hard to know, really. So, yeah, that is one fairly obvious angle with this, where it's like, if they designed their business model a bit differently, they maybe wouldn't have had this problem. So what do? Do they bundle their DLCs together into like year 1, year 2, year 3 packs? Do they just slash the prices massively, but at the same time, they're still running a business and they're in a niche market where, it's a niche market, right? They're not going to get massive sales. So, it is sort of a problem that they've created for themselves, but also I think there's other important things to talk about with this idea. I don't think they're trying to hoodwink anyone here. With all of those DLC updates, at the end of the day, there's a few things here. So they release their games. Now, sometimes Paradox release a game and it's really good. Sometimes they release a game and it's Imperator Rome, and it's only fixed with paid DLC. People who like, say, the Civilization series will know this quite well, where the base Civ games slightly range in their quality, but then once you add in 1 or 2 DLCs, they're really good. So effectively what ends up happening is the price of entry gets really expensive. Now, the thing is, with a game like Europa Universalis 4, that just has years of consistent development, right, being put into it, which means that there's a lot of DLC left over. So, in this case, they're being honest about it, right? If this actually comes out, they say they've not actually landed in pricing or anything like that, like that yet. For me, it's just, if they were being a bit dishonest, being a bit sneaky, locking content behind you, doing things like that, I'd be a bit less okay with. I'm actually thinking maybe 4 or 5 years forward into the future for what our company's doing. We're, aiming to be a narrative studio. You'll see our first release this year, but eventually, I want to have monthly content updates, right? And if we're going to be having monthly content updates, and like we're doing, ongoing series of narrative games and short stories and things like that, does a subscription service and a la carte model end up making sense there? I'm not quite sure. It seems to make sense for me. For me, though, with all of these business model things, the core is honesty, and it is about what you are willing to provide to your customer in return for what they are giving you. And this is where a lot of the microtransactions and the loot boxes fall really foul for me. And that's even past the psychological stuff. It's the way that the company is using all of these different layers of mystery to fundamentally mask that they're giving you a really bad deal. Whereas here, they're saying there is deal A, which is the a la carte model, there is deal B, you can analyze what they are for yourself, go on ahead. Honestly, I think that is mostly fair. It's straight up fair. So, yeah, let me know if you're if you're a core Paradox gamer. For me, if I was picking up, I already own Crusader Kings, but if I was to pick it up fresh, I'd maybe get the DLC or the thing for a month and see, I could sort of trial every single DLC, work out which ones I don't want, which ones I want. I don't know. I want to hear your opinion on this. I'm not settled in my opinion. I think it's an extremely interesting question, though. I'll admit a lot of that's because I'm trying to work out what our future plans are for when we, scale up the team and we're releasing more content. Anyway, with that covered, let's move on to our China double whammy. So, a new US-China trade agreement may have actually cleared the skies for the PS5 and Xbox Series X releases. Phase 1 of a new deal will hopefully put the trade war dispute a little bit to bed, at least for the consoles. Now, at one stage, the US were primed to add a 25% import tax to a variety of Chinese products, and this would have included PlayStation and Xbox units. So basically, the industry has dodged a bullet. Consoles, they could have been $100 more plus for consumers, consumers, or companies would have had to eat an extremely painful loss on each one of those sales. So overall, a good thing for the industry. Moving forward, it just means that the market of the games industry will be operating in a more efficient manner. Next, though, speaking of China, a nice little helping of international censorship. A story posted to Reddit suggests that even in the international version of Total War 3 Kingdoms, you can't rename units if the new names contain certain words. And these certain words are, Xi, as in Xi Jinping, Tibet, Taiwan, or, Dalai, the Dalai Lama. Of course, references to China's autocratic leader for life, its occupation of Tibet, its legitimacy dispute with Taiwan, or as Blizzard call it, I think it's Chinese Taipei or something Taipei, and of course, the Dalai Lama, who's currently in a bit of exile. Not the largest story ever, but look, I think it's the right thing to actually boost this one. Look, I've got a platform, I believe in freedom of speech and things like that, very anti-censorship in cases like this, so I'm absolutely going to use this platform to spread stories like this, even if they are a little bit more inconsequential things. I think back to that time when Rainbow Six Siege, when it was prepping for a Chinese release, was going to end up pushing a worldwide censorship of its maps to remove things like gambling references. Now, thankfully, they didn't do that, but this is a trend we could see more and more and more, and that is why I do think we should be looking out for it. We should be proactively vigilant. At the end of the day, whatever is going to go in the Chinese version, fine, that's for them to decide. But when it comes to the international version, I do not believe that, international people should be, basically sort of dealing with CCP censorship. Come on, it's ridiculous. And I think companies who bow down to that sort of thing are absolute spineless cowards. And I'm very disappointed in Creative Assembly for not, uncensoring the international version. They absolutely should. And with that covered, let's hop over some very, very contested waters to Japan. So, well, this is a really wild one. You know the way sometimes a game is delayed and maybe you'll try to cancel a pre-order or something like that. Maybe some other people will be okay to wait for the release date. Well, Square Enix are seemingly choosing 4 people, and it's very weird. So, of course, Final Fantasy VII Remake was delayed, and a mail sent to US customers by the Square Enix online store is outlining their bold new plan. It's a bit odd. So, customers in the US who have pre-ordered have to opt into their pre-order by the end of February, or it will be cancelled. And after that, it won't be possible to reinstate the pre-order because of limited stock. But conversely, the European version of the very same email allows users to cancel their pre-order via the link, which, is a bit more reasonable of a way to do things, but it's quite odd because, it's an A/B test. I don't think it's planned to be an A/B test, but it's essentially, we've sent out the same thing to both markets, just that the emails do literally the opposite thing. How bizarre. I'm assuming it's just a bit of miscommunication, but a funny little story. And next, a leaked trailer for the upcoming PS5 launch title Godfall has been doing the rounds online, and it's been generating quite a bit of buzz for the visuals and the combat. But this buzz can actually get a little bit louder because the dev account